Tae-san's friend wants to show him something cool at a festival on the beach. There is a woman dressed up like a beautiful mermaid statue. She is standing perfectly still. Tae-san thinks she is just a fake statue, so he decides to play a trick. He gets a ladder and climbs up next to the statue. He pokes her to see if she is real. As soon as he touches her secret place, Tae-san realizes she is a real person dressed up as a mermaid. The woman, whose name is In-hai, gives him an angry look, but she keeps standing still. At that time, the people around him are also extremely surprised by the scene. Tae-san feels bad for what he has done, so he gets down. He tells his friend that it isn't a real statue after all. After Tae-san walked away, In-hai went looking for him. When she finds him, she gives him 2 big slaps across the face to teach him a lesson. She asks Tae-san if he knew she was a real person before he touched her. "If I knew you were real, I never would have done that." Some people watching had made bets on whether the statue was real or not. When In-hai shows everyone that it is just her dressed up, the people who bet she was real win money from those who thought she was fake. Even though Tae-san plays a mean trick on her, after that day, he starts to like In-hai, and she might even like him back. One day, when Tae-san is riding in a truck, he sees In-hai teaching ballet. When she notices him watching, Tae-san quickly hides, feeling shy about their past. Even though he has played a mean trick before, In-hai is still nice and innocent. After the festival, Tae-san and In-hai start running into each other more. Soon, they become boyfriend and girlfriend. But then, In-hai tells Tae-san she is pregnant. Tae-san says that Hai has to get an abortion, and it doesn't matter how much she begs him not to, and he won't change his mind. He goes with In-hai to the hospital and makes her have the operation. Then he leaves without even saying goodbye. Tae-san seems like a mean boyfriend, but after he leaves the hospital, he goes somewhere private and cries hard. Even though he is forcing the abortion, it makes Tae-san very sad. Maybe he has his own problems that make him act so cold. 8 years later, a girl named Soo-jin is playing soccer with some other kids at the hospital. She is actually the daughter of In-hai and Tae-san. She has acute leukemia, and her mother is unable to find a donor for a bone marrow transplant for her. The friend of In-hai, Detective Sun-woo, is with Soo-jin at the hospital. He is motivating her and giving her hope that she will get the bone marrow transplant soon, and then she will be able to live a normal life. One day, Tae-san and In-hai go to a coffee shop to talk, and Tae-san feels very uncomfortable. In-hai avoids looking him in the eye, which shows that she needs to ask him a favor. In-hai tells Tae-san that she has a daughter who is sick with leukemia. The little girl needs a bone marrow transplant, but there are no matches. In-hai gives Tae-san the hospital address and asks if he will donate his bone marrow. Tae-san is surprised that In-hai has a daughter, and he wonders if she has gotten married. But then In-hai looks right at him and says, "My daughter is 8 years old." Suddenly, Tae-san realizes the truth. This little girl must be his daughter too. He remembers back when he had made In-hai get an abortion when she was pregnant. In-hai warns Tae-san he has no right to meet their daughter. She says she is engaged to another man who raises the little girl as his own daughter, and all Tae-san has to do is donate his bone marrow. Hearing that Soo-jin is his daughter, Tae-san goes after In-hai and yells at her that she had not gone for an abortion at that time, and she didn't even tell him about his daughter. In-hai also gets angry and says that she and her daughter have no relation with him, as she still remembers that they were a burden for Tae-san 8 years ago. She says that even if he can be the donor still, she will not allow him to meet Soo-jin. At night, Tae-san feels very depressed, thinking about the whole matter. 8 years after he broke up with In-hai, his life was a complete mess. He gets the bad habits of gambling, and he offers himself to rich girls for money. He works at the pawn shop and lives at an old friend's house. The next day, he goes to the hospital for his blood test. After giving his blood for the test, he tries to ask about Soo-jin from In-hai, but In-hai rudely behaves and doesn't tell him anything about her. Then, he goes to the children's ward and meets a little girl accidentally. It turns out that she is Soo-jin, who calls Tae-san dad. This makes Tae-san very emotional, but Tae-san says that he is not her dad and he is just a passerby. Soo-jin remembers him as the person from a photo with her mom, so she called him dad. She gives him her favorite toy, and wants him to return that toy to her after the surgery. Tae-san takes the toy and comes back from the hospital. The next day, the blood test result comes, and fortunately, Tae-san is matched for the donor of the bone marrow transplant. In-hai becomes very happy and calls Tae-san to tell him about this news. At that time, Tae-san is at his pawn shop, and during the phone call, a girl named Mi-suk comes to the shop with a digital camera. She is in a hurry and wants to get some money while staking her camera at the shop. So, Tae-san quickly gives her cash with the receipt, takes the camera, and puts it in his pocket. Then, he goes to the hospital, where the doctor tells him that the surgery will be on the 26th of this month, and he has to take care of himself. He should avoid getting any scars so that he would not get an infection before the surgery. He listens to all the instructions and goes out happily. When he reaches his shop, His colleagues tell him that Mi-suk came earlier asking about him. She wants him to come to her place for an urgent piece of work. So, Tae-san goes to her home. When he knocks on the door, no one comes out. So, he enters the house to check out. But suddenly, someone attacks from behind him, and he becomes unconscious. He awakens in the middle of a horrific crime scene. Blood is everywhere, even on his clothes and face. In horror, Tae-san recognizes Mi-suk lying brutally stabbed next to him. This is when two cops walk in. They quickly draw their guns, and Tae-san instinctively raises his hands in the air. He doesn't even realize that he's clutching the knife in one hand until a cop orders him to drop it. The cops take him down and cuff him. They take him to the police station. At the station, Tae-san insists that he was set up. But cops don't believe him. He is being investigated by Detective Sun-woo. First, Tae-san tries to prove his alibi, but it turns out that his alibi is also not ascertained, because his co-workers at the pawn shop give statements against his alibi. They are also planning to frame Tae-san in this murder. Even the police find the fingerprints of Tae-san in the house of Mi-suk, and also on the weapon of murder. Police think that he went into the house of Mi-suk under the influence of drugs, and stabbed her when she refused to please him in her house. Also, the drug test is positive for Tae-san, and he has a mark of injection on his arm. In the cell of prison, Tae-san thinks about his previous life and finds out who can do this with him. Then he remembers Moon Il-suk, who had made him go to prison under false charges 8 years ago, and now he is again using Tae-san to clear off his name of this murder, and put the allegation on Tae-san. He also remembers the surgery of his daughter, which is in 2 weeks, and he can't harm himself, as if he gets infectious, he will not be able to undergo the surgery. In the next interrogation, he tells Sun-woo about his location at the time of the murder. However, Sun-woo says that there is no such store, and there is also no CCTV footage at that place that could confirm his location. Actually, the store where he was sent at that time by his co-workers on the ask of Moon Il-suk is shifted immediately after his visit. Also, the CCTV was removed from that place so that he had no evidence of his alibi at the time of the murder. In the night, when he is sleeping in his prison cell, another prisoner attacks him and tries to kill him, but somehow, he manages to dodge this attack and saves himself. Police don't believe that the other prisoner attacked him, as the other prisoner has low-degree charges, while Tae-san has committed murder, according to them. But actually, Moon Il-suk sent the other prisoner to kill Tae-san so that there remains no chance that Tae-san could prove his innocence. The next day, Sun-woo tries to record Tae-san's statement, but he still insists that he is being framed in this murder, and he did nothing. Then, we see Tae-san being transferred to another police station, when the police mobile carrying Tae-san collides with a truck in a horrible accident. Luckily, Tae-san is safe in the police vehicle. He wakes up before the other police officers in the car, and thinks that he has been chased to be murdered. He suspects that this accident also happened by the order of Moon Il-suk to kill him, like the incident of the previous night. He thinks that if he remained in the police station, he would be killed by Moon Il-suk, but he has to save his life for his little daughter. So, he plans to escape from the police mobile before the other police officers wake up. He gets out of the wrecked mobile and takes a nearby bike. He starts driving the bike even though he is cuffed with handcuffs. In this way, he escapes from the scene, becoming a fugitive just for the sake of his daughter's life. Meanwhile, Prosecutor Park reaches the police station asking about Tae-san, but there she comes to know that Tae-san has escaped from the hands of the police after the accident. This makes Prosecutor Park very angry. Actually, Prosecutor Park was very close to Mi-suk. She was the one who gave Mi-suk a new life, by making her counter her drug abuse life. But then, Prosecutor Park used Mi-suk against Moon Il-suk. She appointed Mi-suk to the nightclub of Moon Il-suk to grab the attention of Moon Il-suk, and this is how the relationship between Mi-suk and Moon Il-suk started. Prosecutor Park wanted to gather evidence against Moon Il-suk, so she gave a digital camera to Mi-suk and asked her to record everything if she found anything suspicious. Then, one day, when Moon Il-suk took a famous politician, Jo Seo-hee, to the house of Mi-suk to discuss their illegal business, Mi-suk took the chance and planted the camera, recording their whole meeting in it. Jo Seo-hee found herself uncomfortable at that house, but Moon Il-suk reassured her that it was safe there because he believed in Mi-suk totally. After getting the recording, Mi-suk approached Prosecutor Park to inform her about the situation, but she was outside of the country for some work, and her phone was off. Mi-suk asked her co-worker to inform Prosecutor Park about her call as soon as possible, but the whole conversation is captured by Moon Il-suk and Jo Seo-hee. They got very angry at her, and they had no choice but to kill her, in order to save their reputation in society. Mi-suk also had a hint that her life was in danger, so she grabbed that camera and submitted it at the pawn shop where Tae-san worked. She got some money in exchange for that camera and went home, packing to leave the country. Before she could leave, Moon Il-suk reached her home. Il-suk asks if she realized how much he cared for her, and Mi-suk stammers through her tears. So Il-suk demands to know why she betrayed him, and Mi-suk says she had no choice, which makes Il-suk furious, so he yells that she played with his heart and feelings, then grabs his guard's knife and starts stabbing Mi-suk over and over until she falls to the ground and dies. Later, Moon Il-suk and Jo Seo he discussed the whole matter and decided to frame someone else for that murder, so that they were not affected by its consequences. There is a coming auction day at which both of these evil parties are going to make a huge amount of money, so they want to stay clean until this day of auction at every cost. Back in the present, Tae-san breaks all the laws and escapes from the police. He leaves the motorbike in front of a school and boards a truck in its back to go out of the city. Meanwhile, Prosecutor Park becomes the in charge of the case of Tae-san, and she, with all the other detectives, starts finding Tae-san. In the night, we see Tae-san gets a cutting saw machine in the storeroom of a house and uses it to cut his handcuffs. Prosecutor Park starts the investigation and, first of all, checks Mi-suk's body, where she finds a receipt for giving the camera to the pawnshop. When she goes to that pawnshop and asks about the camera, the worker there says that Tae-san was on duty at that time, and he didn't put that camera in the storage, so they don't know about the camera. So now Prosecutor Park starts finding Tae-san with more hard work. She also remembers Tae-san from her past, and thinks that maybe he is not the real murderer, but she doesn't have proof to testify to her theory, so she doesn't tell anyone. Meanwhile, Moon Il-suk also comes to know about the camera from his men at the pawnshop, so he orders his son, who looks like a gangster, to fetch out the camera from Tae-san and then kill him. So his son also starts the search for Tae-san. The next morning, Tae-san is feeling really hungry. He sees an old woman struggling to catch a cock for the dinner, so he helps her in catching that cock and, in return, gets the food to his fill. But when a man comes there, he flees from the house of that old woman. Police also come to know about the location of Tae-san, and they hurry to that place. Police search the whole forest from dawn to dusk, where Tae-san is hiding, but when they are close to Tae-san, some bombs explode nearby, diverting the attention of the police from Tae-san. Tae-san uses the opportunity to run off from that place, but the son of Moon Il-suk captures him and points a knife at his neck. He asks about the digital camera, but Tae-san doesn't have that camera. He remembers the day when Mi-suk came to his shop and handed over a camera for some money. Then, he tricks the son of Moon Il-suk and flees from his hands. Disguising himself under the dress of the police, he takes a bus and goes towards another village. In that village, he catches an eye on a house where a mother and her young daughter live alone. He makes both of them hostages and eats dinner at their home. He doesn't harm them and even gives clothes to the young daughter to cover her legs. He says that he is not a killer but is framed in this case. Then he sees his wound and remembers that the doctor asked him to stay away from infections, otherwise, they will not be able to undergo the surgery. So, he takes a shower at their house and washes his wounds. Then, he puts a gel on his wounds to make them aseptic. Meanwhile, police come to that village, searching for Tae-san in each house. They also come to the house where Tae-san is hiding, but the young daughter tells the police that they have not seen any fugitives, and that they are safe there. Actually, she believes Tae-san even though they met just a short while ago. The scene shifts to Eun-hye, who becomes shocked by watching the news about Tae-san. She weeps a lot while thinking that the life of her daughter is at stake, and now Tae-san is on the run after committing a murder. The pre-treatment for Soo-jin's surgery has started, and she is being exposed to radiation daily. This makes her condition even worse, and Eun-hye keeps weeping, experiencing the whole situation, knowing that the donor is on the run at that time. Luckily, Tae-san is safe and calls Eun-hye, informing her that he is safe and he will reach the hospital on the day of the surgery. He tells her that he didn't commit any murder and that he is being framed in this case, but Eun-hye just wants him to be safe from any kind of infection until the day of the surgery. She also tells him that the pre-treatment has started and now that treatment can't be reversed. They have to transplant the bone marrow, otherwise, Soo-jin will die. After that, he remembers the day Mi-suk took the camera to him in his pawnshop. He unintentionally put the camera in his pants and brought it to his home, where his friend Man-suk was talking about going on a trip with his girlfriend. He needed a camera for the trip, so he took the camera from Tae-san's clothes. So now he calls his friend Man-suk and asks him to meet him at home, but Man-suk was present at the police station at that time, and the police knew that he was coming home to meet his friend, so they set him up. But when Tae-san reaches the house, he finds Man-suk dead in the house. It turns out that the son of Moon Il-suk reaches there before him and kills Man-suk in search of that camera. Tae-san is shocked by seeing his friend dead there. He suspects that someone is also there in the house, so he tries to go up by the door and stumbles upon Detective Sun Woo, who has come there to capture him, but Tae-san runs to save his life from the killer and avoid his arrest at the hands of Sun Woo. Tae-san hides in the back of a truck with goods. Meanwhile, the killer comes there and starts finding him in that truck by stabbing the cartons. But luckily, a police officer comes there along with 2 workers, and the killer runs from that place. The killer also can't expose himself to the public according to the orders of his father, Moon Il-suk. Meanwhile, Prosecutor Park is informed about the whole incident. She comes to visit the crime scene and shows her anger at Sung-woo for coming before Tae-san alone without informing other police officers. The story shifts to the past when Detective Sung-woo first met with In-hae and her daughter, when someone complained that they were living on a property illegally. Actually, after Tae-san left In-hae, she couldn't even go to her parents' house and had a very miserable life. She used to work day and night to feed her daughter and herself. At that time, she had no money to rent a house. That's why she was sleeping with her daughter at the building where she used to teach dance, though it was very cold there. Seeing their condition, Detective Sung-woo took them to his friend's house and allowed them to live there. This is how their friendship started and converted into a relationship, and now they are engaged. Back in the present, when Sung-woo checks the call logs of Tae-san's phone, he discovers the number of In-hae in it. It shocks him, as In-hae had never talked about Tae-san in the previous 4 years. So, he goes to the pawn shop to investigate the matter, and learns that a beautiful young lady came some days before to see Tae-san. Sung-woo suspects that she is In-hae but doesn't know that why she came to see Tae-san. Then he goes to In-hae to ask about the matter, but can't do so at that time because In-hae is upset due to Soo-jin's condition. At night, we see Tae-san, who has reached a far-off place by that truck. While it's raining heavily, when he is hiding in the woods, he listens to the cries of a woman. At first, he thinks that it is a ghost, but when he gets near it, it's a pregnant woman who is having labor pains. She couldn't reach the hospital due to the rain, and now the delivery time is near, and she is all alone as her husband is in the army. So, Tae-san takes that woman to her home and boils water for her. He sterilizes the instruments in that water, and then helps her push the baby out. During this procedure, he remembers how he pushed In-hae into the operation theater for abortion. He repents, thinking about how tough it would have been for In-hae during her delivery. He had left her alone at that time, but it was due to Moon Il-suk who threatened to murder In-hae if he wouldn't take the false convictions on himself. That's why he broke up with In-hae and left her alone with a heavy heart. Back in the present, baby is out, and Tae-san caresses the baby while holding him in his arms. At the police station, when Prosecutor Park is discussing the case of Tae-san with everyone, she receives a call from an informant. He tells about the whereabouts of Tae-san, so the whole team starts driving towards the village where Tae-san is hiding. Meanwhile, Tae-san is washing his blood-stained clothes himself, and that woman watches his picture on TV. She is shocked by knowing that Tae-san is actually a fugitive killer. When the police knock at her door, she goes out and miraculously doesn't tell them about Tae-san. Actually, she is impressed by what Tae-san did for her, and that's why she is now helping him. She even makes him run while handling the police herself. Police find the clothes of Tae-san in her bathroom and start chasing him in the forest. Running through the forest, Tae-san reaches a high cliff, and there is no way ahead. Sung-woo is following him. Tae-san stops at the cliff, thinking about whether he should jump from there or not. Then, Sung-woo points a gun at him to stop him, but Tae-san decides to jump from that cliff. Seeing this, Sung-woo shoots at him, but his aim is diverted by the killer, who throws a stone at him to distract him. Still, Tae-san gets injured by the bullet and falls into the water below that cliff. Seeing this, Sung-woo and Prosecutor Park also jump behind him into the water to search for him, but they can't find Tae-san and come out after a while. Outside the water, Prosecutor Park yells at Sung-woo for shooting Tae-san. She wants to arrest him alive, as he is a source of evidence against Moon Il-suk and Jo Seo-hee. Sung-woo tells her that he aimed for his knee, but someone diverted his aim by hitting his hand with a stone. So now the police have started searching for the man who diverted the aim of Sung-woo. Meanwhile, Tae-san reaches the bank of the river through the running water. There, an old man finds him and takes him to his home. He treats his wound and gives him herbal antiseptics to put on the wound so that he will not be infected. It turns out that the man is Mr. Han, and he already knows Tae-san. 8 years ago, Tae-san spared his life when Mr. Han was running away from Moon Il-suk after losing all his wealth to him. Then, he came to these hilly areas to spend his life anonymously. At present, Mr. Han is too scared that Moon Il-suk will find him while searching for Tae-san. So, he asks Tae-san to leave his house as soon as possible, but Tae-san tells him about his daughter's condition and begs him for help. Mr. Han agrees and fabricates his clothes, showing that Tae-san is dead due to the flow of water. Then he gives a bag full of herbal medicines for Tae-san's wound, and fabricates some herbs on his face, which makes his face swollen. He also gives him his truck and asks him to go to the city where a man would take him to a ship to the Philippines, and stay there for 10 days. Traffic police stop Tae-san on his way, but they can't even realize his face. Meanwhile, Prosecutor Park learns about In-hae's relationship with Tae-san and Sung-woo. Now she gets the point of why Sung-woo is so angry at Tae-san and is trying to capture him, whether alive or dead. Police found the belongings of Tae-san along the bank of the river 10 miles away from the point where he jumped. By seeing these belongings, they come to the conclusion that Tae-san is dead by now, and his body is somewhere in the water. So, they spend a lot of time to find his body but fail. On the other hand, In-hai watches the news of the death of Tae-san on her phone and becomes very distressed. She goes to the doctor and begs her to devise any other plan to stop the pre-treatment. However, the doctor can't do anything regarding the pre-treatment. Without the donor, Soo-jin can't survive now. Hearing this, In-hai faints suddenly. Meanwhile, Tae-san heads to the city, and instead of going straight to the ship for Philippines, he first goes to the hospital to see his daughter. He sees his daughter hiding behind a wall so that In-hai can't notice him, but Soo-jin catches sight of him. Although Soo-jin's condition is getting worse and worse by the time, she feels very happy and excited after seeing her father. After that, Tae-san calls In-hai to tell her that he is alive and will come to the hospital on the surgery day. In-hai is extensively relieved by hearing about his safety. She wants Tae-san to surrender to the police so that he would remain in the prison safe. But Tae-san tells her that the people who are against his life would kill him in prison easily. That's why he must remain outside the prison and care for himself. He also tells her that he is taking a ship to the Philippines tonight and will return on the day of surgery. Then we see that Prosecutor Park tapped their whole conversation, and now she knows about the location of Tae-san that night. Meanwhile, Moon Il-suk also learns about In-hai and Soo-jin's relationship with Tae-san. So, he goes to the hospital to meet Soo-jin and pretends to be an old friend of Tae-san. After that, Prosecutor Park devises a plan to capture Tae-san this time. She doesn't want any loophole, so she collects the cell phones of every member of her team so that no one can contact anyone during the operation. Moon Il-suk knows about the situation that the police are going to capture Tae-san, but he doesn't know about the location. The police team successfully arrests Tae-san, who is hiding in a ship going to the Philippines, and when they are coming back to the city, Prosecutor Park allows her team to use their phone. An assistant police officer tells Sung-woo about the whole operation, who is angry about not being invited to the operation. Also, a mole in their team leaks their location to Moon Il-suk. After some time, the killer comes there in a truck and attacks their vehicle in which they are carrying Tae-san. All the police officers are beaten up, and their phones are destroyed. The goons also destroy the tires of their vehicles so that police can't follow them. Prosecutor Park tries to protect Tae-san, but a goon comes and hits her head, making her unconscious. The killer takes Tae-san with him in his car. After some time, Prosecutor Park comes to her senses. She takes the car of a passing civilian and follows the vehicles carrying Tae-san. Meanwhile, Sung-woo also reaches the location where police mobiles were attacked and finds out the Prosecutor Park is following the goons alone. They take Tae-san to an abandoned place where Moon Il-suk is also present. He asks for the digital camera, and right away, Tae-san is confused. He had assumed that they killed Man-suk to get the camera, but realizes only now that they still don't have it. Boss Moon orders him to tell them where it is, and he'll make his death less painful in exchange. But Tae-san asks why Moon Il-suk always frames him to hide his murders or illegal actions. Moon Il-suk tells him that he is such an easy target as he lives his life in a very meaningless way that no one cares about him. Also, he mentions that 8 years ago, he was such a fool that he obeyed all the orders even though he left his beloved In-hai. Tae-san regrets that he ruined his whole life for such a bastard who is again framing him and wants to kill him. Then, Moon Il-suk sees Tae-san's wound, which is well treated. He also sees his bag full of herbal medicines. He wants to know that the person who helped him in treating his wound and gave him so many medicines, but Tae-san doesn't reveal Mr. Han at that time. That's why Moon Il-suk sends his killer son to find the man in the hilly areas who helped Tae-san. Meanwhile, Prosecutor Park reaches there, and the men of Moon Il-suk find her outside the building. They beat her, and then take her to Moon Il-suk, who calls Congresswoman Jo Seo-hee and tells the whole situation. She orders Moon Il-suk to kill both Tae-san and Prosecutor Park. Moon Il-suk then comes to Tae-san, taking Prosecutor Park with him. He deals with Tae-san to kill Park and give the camera to him, and in return, he will leave him alone. Tae-san agrees and takes the gun from him, pointing at Prosecutor Park. Tae-san pulls the trigger, but there's nothing, just the click of an unloaded gun. Boss Moon laughs, calling him an idiot, and raises his gun to shoot Prosecutor Park himself. But Tae-san exclaims that he'll never get the camera if he kills that woman. He calls their moves one by one. He knew they'd never give him a loaded weapon, but they could get his fingerprints this way and pin Park's murder on him just like they did with Mi-suk. At this, Moon Il-suk points the gun at Tae-san, but Tae-san says that he can't kill him as he has the camera, and knows about Moon Il-suk and Jo Seo-hee's relationship. Hearing this, Moon Il-suk puts the gun down and agrees on the previous deal in which Tae-san will go and fetch the camera, and then Moon Il-suk leaves him and his loved ones alone. After that, both hostages are kept in separate rooms, and Moon Il-suk goes out of the building, thinking about what to do with Prosecutor Park. Then, Tae-san fools the guards on him, and beats them though he is bound with the chair. Then he frees himself and runs outside. He takes the car of his enemies and collides it with a wall. Then he takes his bag full of his herbal medicine and frees Park to take her with him. Moon Il-suk is in front of them, pointing a gun at them, but Tae-san drives straight without any fear of him. Moon Il-suk jumps to save his life, and this way, Tae-san and Park escape from his grip. Although Tae-san saved Prosecutor Park's life, he still doesn't believe her. Her hands are still bound, and her mouth is shut by the tape. She is struggling to say that he should open her mouth at least, but Tae-san doesn't want himself to be arrested before the surgery, so he plays a trick. He frees her and then asks her to come to the driving seat to drive. But when Park comes out of the car, he continues driving, leaving Park behind. However, Park knows that Tae-san is not guilty and wants to help him. She is the one who planted the camera to get the evidence against Moon Il-suk and Jo Seo-hee, but Tae-san escapes without knowing the truth about Park. Meanwhile, Moon Il-suk calls Jo Seo-hee and tells her about the whole situation. She becomes very angry at him and orders him to get both the escaped hostages back as soon as possible. The co-worker of Prosecutor Park asks her to arrest Moon Il-suk as he is now guilty of kidnapping and attempting murder of an on-duty prosecutor, but she says that the evidence against him is not enough, and only eyewitness Tae-san has escaped from her hands. Then Sung-woo goes to Park and tries to find out the matter. He wants Park to tell him the whole story about the case of Tae-san, as he has seen her with Tae-san and also knows that she was a hostage with Tae-san in that building. But Park doesn't tell him anything because he is the son of a police commissioner, who could possibly be involved with big fish against whom Park is investigating. She just says that Tae-san could be framed in this murder because this case is not as simple as it looks. Meanwhile, Tae-san reaches into the city, hiding in a truck, and sees that the camera is with the girlfriend of Man-suk. But Tae-san himself can't get the camera from her, so he calls In-hai and asks her to meet him for an important task. Unfortunately, their call is being tapped by Prosecutor Park again, and she gets the location where they are going to meet. They make a plan along with other police officers to arrest Tae-san, who will come to the department store to meet In-hai at this time. Meanwhile, the mole in the police department tells the news of Tae-san to Moon Il-suk, and he is also making a plan with his killer son to capture Tae-san. At the general store, the next day, all the police officers are disguised among the ordinary people. Prosecutor Park is watching the whole store through the cameras, and Sung-woo is also in the store to capture Tae-san. When In-hai comes there and tries to find Tae-san, she meets with the co-worker of Sung-woo, who is disguised in the costume of a panda. He tells In-hai that they are here to arrest a criminal and that she should leave this place now. In-hai gets that this is a trap for Tae-san, and she runs outside to avoid meeting Tae-san here. There is a man with a cap and mask in the store. Police think that he is Tae-san and follow him, but when they capture him, it turns out that he is someone else who was asked to come to that place, hiding his face. Meanwhile, Tae-san is observing the whole situation from outside the building of the store, and he has already evaluated that the police will come after him, so he has a plan B for himself. He is going to meet In-hai at the hospital, and he has already reached there on the call of Tae-san. But when he is going there, the killer catches an eye on him and follows him. Seeing him, Tae-san runs and boards a bus. When the killer also boards the bus, Tae-san tricks him and jumps out of the bus. This way, he escapes from the killer. Then he goes to the hospital to meet In-hai. He takes her with him to a safe place to talk to him. Then he tells her about the camera, which is the only evidence that can save him from these false accusations, but he can't go there to get that camera, so he asks In-hai to do this for him. He elaborates the whole plan to In-hai, and then leaves. But after leaving the building, he remembers the gift he bought earlier for Soo-jin, so he goes back to the hospital to give that gift to In-hai so that she can pass it over to Soo-jin. But in the reception area, he finds Sung-woo in front of him talking to In-hai. When Sung-woo sees Tae-san in front of him in the hospital, he tries to run towards him, but In-hai hugs him from behind, stopping him from arresting Tae-san. She is shivering with fear and continuously saying that Tae-san is not the murderer, and he is being framed in this case. Sung-woo wants to arrest him badly, but he also greatly loves In-hai, so he unwillingly stops there and doesn't go behind Tae-san. Meanwhile, In-hai shouts for Tae-san and asks him to run. Tae-san follows her call and runs away from the hospital. He runs so much that he goes very far, and when he looks behind, he finds out that no one is following him. While back at the hospital, Sung-woo is arguing with In-hai that she should have told him about Tae-san earlier. Also, he doesn't know that Tae-san is actually the donor who is going to give his bone marrow to Soo-jin. That's why he is running from the police till the date of the surgery. When Sung-woo asks In-hai to make Tae-san arrest himself to save his life from the enemies and bring him to the hospital at the surgery date, In-hai says that his life is in danger in the prison as well. Someone had already attempted to murder him there. That's why now he will come to the police himself after the surgery for the sake of Soo-jin. On the other hand, we see Moon Il-suk, who is very angry at his subordinates. He reprimands them for not being able to capture Tae-san even when he has been in front of them so many times. He is also angry at the incompetency of his killer son, who failed him so many times. Meanwhile, Prosecutor Park comes to In-hai and tells her that she knows everything about her and Tae-san. Also, she knows about Soo-jin's surgery. She has been tapping the phone calls of In-hai and Tae-san, and knows that they have been in contact during the previous days. That's why Prosecutor Park asks In-hai to make Tae-san come to Park. He can trust her as she also wants to defeat his enemies. She also reveals to In-hai that Tae-san is being followed by the same enemies who framed him 8 years ago. At this point of the story, In-hai comes to know that Tae-san didn't leave her willingly 8 years ago, but was forced to abandon her for her safety. She had been blaming him for all these years, but he was also suffering from that breakup and lived a very miserable life after that. Hearing this, In-hai bursts into tears and repents for the whole of these 8 years that she had spent in the hatred of Tae-san. She weeps a lot, remembering the memories of Tae-san and her when she met 8 years ago. Meanwhile, Sung-woo goes to the Prosecutor Park and yells at her as she has not told him before about Tae-san being the donor for Soo-jin. He says that he would not have shot Tae-san if he had known this truth before. He also tells her that his father is not involved with Jo Seo-hee, as he has checked on him. So now he wants Park to tell him everything about the case of Tae-san and whatever is involved in this. So, Park tells him that Tae-san is being framed by Moon Il-suk, a famous businessman. Jo Seo-hee is also involved in this because Moon Il-suk has some secret relations with Seo Jo-hee. Then Sung-woo goes straight to Moon Il-suk to warn him that if he does anything to Tae-san, he will not leave him as Tae-san's life is directly linked with the life of Soo-jin, and Sung-woo is now going to be the father of Soo-jin. Then, Sung-woo appointed a police officer at the hospital to protect Soo-jin and In-hai. Afterward, Sung-woo assures In-hai that he will not let anyone harm her or Soo-jin. He again emphasizes the arrest of Tae-san, taking responsibility for his safety. So, In-hai calls Tae-san again to convince him to arrest himself, as Prosecutor Park and Detective Sung-woo are both on his side. In response, Tae-san tells her that he will first get the evidence of his innocence, which is in that camera, and then go to the police. For this, In-hai has to meet him on the coming day. Both agree on the meeting point, but their call is again being tapped. Meanwhile, Prosecutor Park is discussing the matter with her chief, who is also concerned about how they will be able to capture the big fish in this case. They know that Jo Seo-hee has political powers, and she is going to stand for the mayor's seat soon, and Moon Il-suk is also very powerful, so it would not be easy to arrest them without any solid proof. The next day, In-hai comes out of the hospital and goes to the subway station. A co-worker of Prosecutor Park is following her, and also Sung-woo is following her. When she reaches the other station through the subway, she gets out of the train. She walks a bit, and when the train starts to go off, she quickly boards the train again, leaving her followers behind. It seems that she now knows that their calls are always tapped, and they have made a second plan to ditch the followers before meeting with Tae-san. But we see that she goes to a shop to meet Man-suk's girlfriend. Sung-woo is still following her, and looking at her from behind a wall. At the shop, In-hai pretends that she left her camera with Tae-san, and Tae-san lent it to Man-suk. As Tae-san is on the run and Man-suk is dead, she thinks that the camera is with Man-suk's girlfriend, which she needs back now. But that girl tells In-hai that the camera is at the house of a friend. She gives him the address and phone number of that friend. In-hai takes it and quickly goes to take the taxi. After that, Sung-woo also comes into that shop and investigates the matter. Meanwhile, In-hai changes her car and takes Tae-san with her. She takes him to an abandoned place. There, she talks her heart out about the incident in their lives, which happened 8 years ago. She asks why he didn't tell her the truth at that time, but Tae-san says that it was best for her not to know the truth. Then, both of them go to the place where the camera is. In-hai hands over the information about the camera holder to Tae-san and leaves. Tae-san calls that boy and takes the camera from him. That boy shows him that there is a video that is not playable due to some error, but he can get it fixed. However, Tae-san doesn't want him to fix it, so he gives him some money and takes the camera with him. He is happy that finally, he succeeded in getting the evidence on which his life depends. But when Tae-san is about to leave that building with the camera, the killer comes there and starts fighting with Tae-sam. He beats Tae-san and takes the camera from him. Then he tries to kill Tae-san by choking him, but In-hai comes there and attacks the killer with a billboard. The camera from the hands of the killer is dropped on the ground. He takes the camera back when In-hai is trying to get that for herself. The killer is now beating In-hai, but meanwhile, Sung-woo reaches there in his car. Seeing him, the killer runs away. In-hai gives the car keys to Tae-san and asks him to leave. Sung-woo also allows him to go away, while he takes In-hai with him in his car. Tae-san takes the car of In-hai and goes away. He is very sad as the only means of saving his life has been missed from his hands. During the drive, the killer again comes in front of Tae-san's car. As he now has the camera, he He wants to kill Tae-san so that there must not be any evidence left against Moon Il-suk and Jo Seo-hee. But Tae-san drives back and runs away in the car. After that, the killer gives the camera to Moon Il-suk, who calls for an expert to decrypt the video from that camera. Then, he watched that video along with his subordinates. In the video, he can be seen with Jo Seo-hee making an illegal business deal with her. After making a copy of that video, he takes the camera to Jo Seo-hee. She immediately destroys that evidence on the spot. Now, the only headache for them is Tae-san. They don't know to which extent Tae-san knows about their deal, so they have to kill him as soon as possible. Meanwhile, Tae-san regrets his foolishness in missing that evidence in the hands of his enemies. Then he meets Prosecutor Park and tells her the whole story about the camera. He also tells her that he has another plan to arrest Moon Il-suk. Hearing this, Prosecutor Park takes him to her apartment, disguised in the dress of a lady with long hair on the head of Tae-san. At the apartment, she gives him food to eat, and after that, Tae-san explains his plan. He shows the sketch of the killer to Park, and tells her that he also took the camera from him and went straight to the house of Moon Il-suk. Also, Tae-san knows that Moon Il-suk is the type of person who would never destroy any evidence without making a copy of it. So, their plan is to first capture the killer by fabricating the death of Tae-san from his hands, and then enter the house of Moon Il-suk to get the evidence. The next day, Prosecutor Park meets with other police officers and takes them to a bar for a drink. She wants to catch the mole inside the police department, which is leaking the inside information to Moon Il-suk. She fabricates a call mentioning the location of Tae-san, and then goes out of the bar to meet with him. As expected, the news was leaked by the mole to Moon Il-suk, and the killer was already present at the meeting location at the correct time. The killer uses a sniper gun to shoot at Tae-san, and then puts that gun on a drone and flies it. Meanwhile, police officers come there and shoot at him, making him unconscious. Tae-san is alive as he is wearing a bulletproof jacket inside. When Sung-woo approaches Tae-san, he wakes up and rides the bike to go away. Sung-woo follows him and reaches an abandoned factory. He calls Park, informing her that Tae-san is alive. Park tells her that she knows this already, as it was her plan to capture the killer. Then Sung-woo asks Tae-san to show up as he wants to talk to him for Soo-jin. Tae-san, who is hiding behind the big pipes, comes over to talk to him. Sung-woo tells him that he will not harm him for the sake of Soo-jin, and Tae-san has to appear before the police after the surgery to clear his name. Meanwhile, Prosecutor Park is trying to get a statement against Moon Il-suk from the killer, but he doesn't say anything. His lawyer comes there in no time and shows her the papers, mentioning that he is a French citizen and loves photography. At the time when Tae-san was shot, he was there to click some photos. Also, he already sent the weapon onto a drone. They have no evidence against him. The chief and the French embassy are also pressuring Prosecutor Park to lead him so she cannot hold him back for long. He is out of their custody within no time. After that, Sung-woo goes to the house of Moon Il-suk and is extremely angry at him because he again tried to kill Tae-san. Actually, in their first meeting, they made a deal not to harm Tae-san until the surgery, and in return, Sung-woo will help him get the camera to Moon Il-suk. That's why he followed and hid when she met Man-suk, and then delivered the information about the camera location to Moon Il-suk. But still, Moon Il-suk tried to kill Tae-san, which enraged Sung-woo. Long story short, Moon Il-suk is not the person to be believed. After some time, Prosecutor Park returns to her home and tells Tae-san that she could not hold the killer for a long time, and also couldn't get his statement. Tae-san is again very sad as he has done so much hard work for this and, in the end, failed. Now, they are going towards their second plan, which is to get the evidence from the house of Moon Il-suk. Tae-san tells Park that he has a voice recording of a subordinate of Moon Il-suk. In the recording, he is clearly saying that Moon Il-suk killed Mi-suk. This evidence is not enough to charge him for the murder, but the police can arrest him for the investigation based on this recording. When the police arrest him, his home will be alone, and Tae-san will go to his house to get the evidence. Park shows the evidence to her coworkers and devises a plan for arresting Moon Il-suk. Meanwhile, Sung-woo is investigating the case of Mi-suk again, and gets footage showing Moon Il-suk going inside the house of Mi-suk on the day of her murder. He shows the footage to Park, and now they can arrest Moon Il-suk with these two strong pieces of evidence. Meanwhile, Tae-san has gone to take Mr. Han with him back to the city, as Moon Il-suk is living inside the house that belonged to Mr. Han, before Moon Il-suk betrayed him and got over the house. So, Tae-san wants him to give a better idea of that house. Mr. Han makes a rough sketch of the house and provides all the details about it. At the same time, Prosecutor Park goes to her chief and gets permission to arrest Moon Il-suk. Then, she goes to the house of Moon Il-suk to arrest him, and takes him with them to the investigator's room. In that room, Park shows video footage of him entering the house of Mi-suk on the day of her murder. On the other side, Tae-san gets over the wall of the house of Moon Il-suk and turns the alarm off. He then drills into the front door and enters the house, but to his surprise, he sees that Moon Il-suk is already present inside the house. It shocks Tae-san to know how it is possible for a man to be available at two places simultaneously. A few hours ago, we saw that, after the arrest of Moon Il-suk, Jo Seo he reached the judge who had to give the arrest warrant for Moon Il-suk. She explains to the judge that Moon Il-suk was present with her at the time of the murder of Mi-suk. So, his alibi is clear, and there is no point in arresting Moon Il-suk. Also, the chief of prosecutor Park is forced to let go of Moon Il-suk, so he engages with Park for some time. Meanwhile, the lawyer of Moon Il-suk gets enough time to free him, and takes him back home in his car. At that time, Prosecutor Park is extremely troubled and worried about Tae-san, who is going to break into the house of Moon Il-suk. She calls Tae-san to stop him but could not reach him, so she runs towards him, but her car is struck by other cars, most probably an act of the people of Moon Il-suk. A taxi driver takes her with him but leaves on an abandoned road again, which was planned by the people of Moon Il-suk. On the other hand, Moon Il-suk has captured Tae-san and is going to kill him. Mr. Han is worried about Tae-san when Tae-san doesn't answer his phone calls, so he himself goes to assess the matter and finds out that the killer is taking Tae-san in his car while being packed in a bag. He places a tracker at the car and follows it. The killer takes Tae-san to a high-rise building and tries to throw him from the roof. Their struggle continues when Mr. Han comes there and calls the killer with the name Glue Stick. It looks like they have a connection from the past. However, the killer stops by hearing the name and frees Tae-san. He seems to be in the phase of emotional shock. Also, Mr. Han looks to be in that same phase by seeing the cap of a pen, which belongs to the killer, but Tae-san quickly takes Mr. Han with him and flees from that place. Meanwhile, Prosecutor Park somehow manages to reach the house of Moon Il-suk. She knows that if Tae-san gets caught today, Moon Il-suk will kill him. So, she tries to jump over the wall of Moon Il-suk's house, but on the other side of the wall, Moon Il-suk is standing with his assistant and waiting for her. They take pictures of an on-duty prosecutor breaking into his house without any warrant. Moon Il-suk threatens her to use these images against her. He asks her to come inside and talk, but at the same time, she receives a call from Tae-san explaining that he is alive and asks her to come back. So, Prosecutor Park comes back from there without talking to Moon Il-suk. When Moon Il-suk knows that his killer son has again failed to kill Tae-san, he becomes furious. He slaps him on the face and also beats him a lot, venting his anger at his son. After that, Prosecutor Park goes to Jo Seo-hee's house and calls her to meet. Jo Seo-hee, who is actually living in a big mansion but faking his living conditions, comes out and talks to her. Park informs her that Tae-san is actually saving his little daughter, and that Jo Seo-hee should leave him until the surgery. But Seo-jo-hee responds very coldly. She thinks that the life of his daughter depends on Tae-san, and that her death would solely depend on him. She doesn't believe that she would be responsible for the death of his daughter as she killed Tae-san. Prosecutor Park is extremely saddened to know that a person who shows herself as so kind and generous to others can actually be so cruel and cold to others. So, she returns home without getting anything. The next day, the chief of Prosecutor Park shows her pictures of her last night while breaking into Moon Il-suk's house. He says that he is under so much pressure to remove her from duty, but he just orders her to take off until the committee decides anything about her. So, after some time, we see her in her apartment lying aimlessly. On the other hand, Moon Il-suk decides to take revenge on Tae-san. He orders his men to kidnap In-hai. When In-hai is kidnapped, the killer makes a video call to Tae-san and asks him to come to a location, otherwise, he threatens to kill In-hai. Tae-san takes the recording of that video call and sends it to Prosecutor Park. He tells her that In-hai is trying to deliver some type of message through her eyes, so he wants her to decode it. In the eyes of In-hai, Prosecutor Park sees that the killer who works for Moon Il-suk has kidnapped In-hai and is keeping her in a photo studio. Meanwhile, Tae-san calls Sun Woo and informs him of the whole situation. He asks him to go and find the photo studio where In-hai is kept. Tae-san himself is driving towards the location asked by the killer in a car left for him. He is also on the video call with that killer throughout his drive. He can't cancel the call, as killer has threatened him to kill In-hai if he does. Meanwhile, Moon Il-suk is at the hospital. He appoints a girl to give some juice to all the hospital workers and nurses, making them sleep in no time. Then Moon Il-suk goes to Soo-jin's room and asks her to come up with him to meet her father. He pretends to be her father's friend in front of Soo-jin, who comes there to take her at her father's request. He shows Soo-jin that he has also prepared an aseptic vehicle for her to reach the destination. At this, Soo-jin agrees and comes out of her aseptic room to go with Moon Il-suk. When Moon Il-suk is taking her in a wheelchair, Soo-jin remembers the call from her father from the previous night, when he had strictly prohibited her from going anywhere without her mother. So, she makes her brain work and runs to hide in a cabin. Moon Il-suk goes behind her, but in the meantime, Tae-san comes there to check on Soo-jin. He is calling loudly for Soo-jin. Hearing this, Moon Il-suk runs from the hospital. Prosecutor Park has also come there. Tae-san asks her to look over Soo-jin while he himself goes behind Moon Il-suk. At the rooftop of a building, Tae-san succeeds in capturing Moon Il-suk. He is very angry at the cheap act of Moon Il-suk involving his daughter in all this. He beats him there and easily overcomes him, but still doesn't kill him at that time. Tae-san is determined to make sure that Moon Il-suk gets punished for all his sins through the legal procedure. On the other side, Sung-woo has reached the photo studio wherein Hai is captured. He beats the guards and then frees in Hai. Tae-san is meeting his daughter at the hospital, who is now back in her aseptic room. Soo-jin shows a present for her father as it is the birthday of Tae-san, and Hai told Soo-jin about the birthday of her father. Seeing this, Tae-san gets emotional and tears flow from his eyes. After some time, Tae-san meets Prosecutor Park and shows her evidence against Moon Il-suk. In an audio recording, the assistant of Moon Il-suk is saying that Moon Il-suk killed Mi-suk. However, the evidence is not enough to keep Moon Il-suk inside the jail, so they decide to convince his assistant to give more evidence against his boss. Then we see Jo Seo-hee, who retains a very good reputation with the public, pretending to be very generous and kind, but in reality, she has a very cruel heart. She also pretends that she lives in a rented house, which is very small and clumsy, but she lives in a mansion connected to her house, where she enjoys a lavish life. She has connections with businessman Moon Il-suk, with whom she has helped succeed in the business by using her connections. In return, Moon Il-suk manages the dirty things for Jo Seo-hee, like killing the persons who get the real identity of Jo Seo-hee. This time, she is mad at Moon Il-suk, saying that he is still unable to kill Tae-san and Prosecutor Park. The next day, Tae-san calls Moon Il-suk and plays the audio evidence on the phone call in which his assistant Halfwit tells that Moon Il-suk is the killer. Tae-san tells Moon Il-suk that he will use this evidence to make him suffer in prison. Hearing this, Moon Il-suk becomes angry and he calls Halfwit to meet him. Moon Il-suk tries to play a trick. He gives a lot of money to Halfwit and convinces him not to disclose anything to the police about the matter. However, Tae-san approaches him and also shows him his own audio recording as evidence against Moon Il-suk. He says that Moon Il-suk is giving him money to frame in the murder case just as he framed Tae-san 8 years ago. As Tae-san now knows about the tricks of Moon Il-suk, he asks Halfwit not to be the prey of Moon Il-suk. Then Tae-san goes to Moon Il-suk and tells him that he will be successful in convincing Halfwit against him. He mocks Moon Il-suk and how blindly he trusts Halfwit and Seo Jo-hee, who are now going to leave his side soon. Moon Il-suk thinks that he is going to prison soon, so he makes another plan and calls for Halfwit again. Halfwit is wound up so tight when he meets the boss that he can barely make eye contact, but Boss Moon surprises him by being nice, too nice, not that Halfwit would know the difference. Moon Il-suk asks him to make the pawnshop co-worker Suk-do as a sacrificial lamb. The police have found the holster that fits the knife, so Halfwit has to say that he gave it to Suk-do as a present. Halfwit rushes out to meet Suk-do, but as he pulls out of the parking garage, Tae-san suddenly pops up in his back seat. Tae-san tells him that if he goes to meet Suk-do now, he will end up caught by the police. Tae-san emphasizes that Moon Il-suk is framing him for the murder, and he should be careful. When Halfwit reaches the place of meetup with Suk-do, he calls him and asks to shift the location. He is doing this on the instructions of Tae-san so that he can get whether the police are involved or not. Tae-san is doing this to convince him to make a statement against Moon Il-suk. He has already asked Sung-woo to appear with Suk-do at the mentioned location at that time. When Sung-woo is seen with Suk-do after changing the location, Halfwit is convinced that Moon Il-suk is making him a sacrificial lamb, so he decides to give more evidence to the police about the murder. He goes to his room and gets out the shirt of Moon Il-suk, which is stained with the blood of Mi-suk. Moon Il-suk was wearing this shirt when he killed Mi-suk. Halfwit sends the shirt to the police. After getting this solid evidence, the police quickly go to the house of Moon Il-suk to arrest him, but he flees from his own home before the police come. He goes to Jo Seo-hee and asks her to help him, but she has also made a deal with Tae-san to not help Moon Il-suk this time, and in return, Tae-san will not reveal her real identity to the public. Moon Il-suk has no other way but to flee the country, and he wants to take revenge on Tae-san before he goes. When he comes to the hospital for revenge, he becomes trapped by the police and arrested. Meanwhile, Seo Jo-hee is also arrested while fleeing from the country at the airport. In the end, Soo-jin's surgery goes well, and she becomes healthy within a few days. We see that Tae-san comes to take her and Hai from the hospital. All the charges from Tae-san have been removed, and now he lives a meaningful life with his family.